Hello and welcome back to CubeCon, where we are in the middle of a top 64, top 64 of the event. So there are 8 cubes going on today, and players will need to 3-0 today to go into the top 8 of this cube. Today we are covering my Peasant cube. We have a couple of players that are 2-0, so one more win gets them into the top 8. Very exciting. And yeah, once players are shuffled up and ready to go, we'll get down to the feature match area. So we have a Selesnya go wide tokens deck against Ivan's really strong Rakdos sacrifice deck. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on here.
So George also has sort of like a counter theme going.
Yeah, he has an Anafenza Kintree Spirit, which is really good with counters. Which we're seeing right now. This is going to be really important because Ivan has cards like Mayhem Devil, which, with the sacrifice theme, it can ping a lot of these 1/1 spirit tokens, a lot of these 1/1 creatures that George needs to play in order to go wide. So this is a Blood Type Harvester. It's a card that you will see quite a lot in Pioneer, especially in the Rakdos mid-range deck. It is a 3/2 that makes a blood token, and you can sacrifice Blood Type Harvester to give target creature X-X, where X is the twice the number of blood tokens you control. So it's a 3/2 threat, so it can get aggressive, but you can just pick away something with this blood token in play. So we'll see what George wants to do here. So he's playing a Porcelain Legionnaire. He's going to take 2 because you never pay the whole 3 mana for a Porcelain Legionnaire. And that is a 3. That's going to be a 40 with First Strike, which is relevant. And then we have a Usher of the Fallen, which will turn into a 3/2.
With those counters, yeah, that's huge.
The bolster on Anafenza is really big here. It seems like George is basically like a mono white deck splashing green for some cards we saw, such as Rancor, which is really good at getting through that damage with Trample, and it goes back to your hand, so you can just keep replaying it and put it on these creatures. So we're going to sacrifice Blood Type Harvester to target Anafenza, but we have a Mutagenic Growth, so George is going to say no to that and give it +2/+2.
That's huge.
That is really huge.
Not expecting that.
No, I wasn't expecting that either, but it makes sense in the strategy George has decided to draft here today. It looks like Ivan has just drawn a Chain Lightning. It's not going to do much. It's going to try again with this Anafenza.
She already did a lot of work.
She's done a lot, and Ivan has also used a lot of resources to deal with that Anafenza. So she's done her work in spades here, and while Ivan is facing down this Porcelain Legionnaire and Usher of the Fallen with a pair of counters on them. And it's important to note here that George was on the play. He did not have a turn 1 play because he did play the Sandsteep Citadel tapped, but he has still managed to produce a really good curve with Anafenza and Porcelain Legionnaire. Plus, that Mutagenic Growth was very well timed. So it looks like George is going to rumble in the red zone because you are essentially the mono white aggro player at this point.
And no boast.
I think he's going to boast. He's either going to boast now or he's going to do some combat tricks. I think he's going to boast and make the creature token. Boast can only work if the creature attacks.
Right, so second main is when you have to cast that. I mean, use the ability. Yeah. Which is great.
Nice soldier token there. Cool. So George is going to do something else here. He's going to play a Basri Solidarity. So this is just like a really simple uncommon that just puts some counters on the creatures that you control.
And those creatures are looking pretty big.
Right, this is it. This Porcelain Legionnaire is looking quite scary because it does have First Strike. And it has higher toughness now as well. So that Mayhem Devil is getting out of range here. This Carrion Feeder's looking kind of sad at the moment.
Aw.
Would you say Carrion Feeder's a cutie? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're playing a Lampad of Death's Vigil, which doesn't really do a lot here. It's another sacrifice payoff if Ivan can draw some cards to make it work. So George is hoping to just draw some more aggression and interaction here. So we have a Spirited Companion. We do have the Goodest Boy in Magic in play, and George is going to draw a card for his troubles. Now that is a cutie.
Definitely.
Big cutie.
Can't deny that.
Big fan of the Spirited Companion. Looks like George is doing a really good job of just trying to apply pressure here, just keeping things going and just rumbling in with these threats with a bunch of counters on them. So we're going to boast again with this Usher of the Fallen, just keep progressing this board state.
The Usher's doing a lot of work.
Usher's done a lot of work, like Anna Fenster's already done a lot of work. Ivan's had to sacrifice a lot of resources just to deal with these cards, but it looks like it's not going to be enough in this game unless Ivan is managing to... this is a really good one.
That's 3 bodies.
3 bodies on a Slingdown Lieutenant, and you do have the Carrion Feeder, so you can buff it up if you can get aggressive. So George is going to cycle this Ash Barrens to get a land out of his deck, probably a forest, just to make sure he can cast those spells.
So that Sling Gang was huge.
That Sling Gang was pretty big. It's going to gum up the board pretty nicely because we do not have Trample right now. George, for all we know, could have a Rancor in hand, and that changes the maths quite a bit. However, as you're playing against the aggro deck, like George has, just having cheap creatures that you can just throw under the bus might be enough to keep you alive here, considering Ivan is on 4 life.
4. Wow.
Yeah.
Feeling the pressure.
He is feeling the pressure, but there is a bunch of ways to gain life in this deck, as we've seen in previous rounds of this cube. Also, Sling Gang Lieutenant does have some life gain themselves. You can sacrifice a goblin to gain 1 life, and opponent loses 1 life. So there is some things you can do there, just to fade some of the damage that is inevitably going to come Ivan's way. Ivan's just more interested in trying to stay alive here.
Right.
Something that many Magic players have done in the past before.
Right, so he's chumping with these goblins.
Yep. These will probably get sacrificed to Carrion Feeder, or the lamp will be the Carrion Feeder because there is no open mana available. If Ivan just wants to squeeze a few extra life on against this pretty scary board state, let's be honest.
Yeah. Well, and the Sling Gang can sack goblins, right?
Yes, Sling Gang can also sack as well, but George continues to boast with this Usher of the Fallen, keep making tokens, just keep applying the pressure.
I've never seen an Usher do this much work. This is
right.
great.
I've only boasted like once with an Usher, but the fact that it's just generated 3 tokens and it's, you know, a 4-2 or 4-3 in this case is really impressive. Again, a card that you don't expect to be really powerful, but it just, in the right deck, it just does so much. And that mutagenic growth also, saving that Anafenza for a turn was a pretty big deal as well. So what does George have here? We have a Soltari Monk. It is a card with Shadow. A very, very old keyword in Magic of old. It's just a nice little evasive threat. It's something that can wear these enchantments, these auras and these equipments that George Lowry has in his deck. He does have things like Rancor, and Soltari Monk has pro-black, and considering, well, it's not pro-black anymore, considering that most of this sacrifice deck does have black creatures, we do have a Murderous Red Cap here as well. That's going to pick off something right now. And this Carrion Feeder can also sacrifice this Murderous Red Cap, so there is another chance that something else could be picked off pretty soon. But Ivan is still on 4 life, so it's going to be a tall order for Ivan to get back into this game.
All right, so George only has the 1 card.
George has the 1 card. It could literally be anything. It could be a land, but it's...
He's doing math.
He's doing his combat maths. And he's... Okay. Just figuring out the best way to do this. So we're going to go aggro with everything. So we've got 2, 4, 6 creatures in the red zone here. So we have a 1/1. We have a 5/3. That's the Possum Legionnaire. We have a 4/2 and a bunch of 1/1s and the Solitary Monk.
Well, and Ivan has to take the damage from the pro-black creature.
Yeah.
So effectively, he's at 2 right now.
Yeah. And it depends what else George has in hand. Could be a basic land. I've been there before. It's the only card in my hand, and I keep looking at it, hoping it's something else but a basic land. But it always ends up being that basic land.
Oh, I just like pretend to read it.
Yeah. It's just like, I don't need this basic land. Can it just magically appear as something else? Then I get upset when it doesn't. Like I'm convincing myself. So there's some pretty intricate combat maths and blocking going on here because Ivan is on 4 life and clutching onto dear life right now. But we do have this Murderous Redcap that might be able to do something here. So Ivan has managed to go back up 1 life because Murderous Redcap is a goblin. And it does trigger with Slingan, you lieutenant.
Do we know what the red cap is doing damage to?
Don't know yet. It's probably going to do damage to a token because these are 1/1s. Everything else, it can't damage the Solitary Monk because it's pro-black. And doing 2 damage to the 2 creatures with the 2 counters is null and void. So it's just better to pick off these tokens.
Right. He does have 2 cards.
He does. It depends what those 2 cards are. Looks like one of them's a mountain, which is not what you want to see.
Definitely not.
So we're going to go into... So we are playing a Shepherd of the Flock, I believe. Yep. So it's just a free one. Just wanting to end this game as quickly as possible.
Oh, Cutthroat. So
we have a Jury Master Review. It gets stronger. It gains in power every time a creature is sacrificed. It's a really good card in this Ragdoll Sacrifice deck. It has more counters the more stuff is sacrificed, and when Jury dies, you can deal damage to, I believe, X creature and X player. Let me just double check the text on that. Based on the amount of counters, based on the power of Jury. Yeah, so it's whenever you sacrifice a permanent. So if, for example, there's like an Evolving Wilds, you can sacrifice that and you will get the counter on it. It applies to like treasure tokens and clue tokens. It's really synergistic. Same also applies to Mayhem Devil. So if you sacrifice the Evolving Wilds, I'm going to ping your creature. So there is a point that this Jury could get our hand, and if you can sacrifice it, that might be the burn spell in this instance that could take George out. But George is in a pretty commanding position here.
Yeah.
With this Usher of the Fallen that has been doing an incredible amount of value, and this Porcelain Legionnaire, which is becoming quite awkward, coupled with the Solitary Monk that is pro-black. So it's basically completely unblockable. So it looks like we're going to sacrifice the red cap to put a counter on Jury and gain a life thanks to Zulaport Cutthroat and drain George for 1. And also, we're putting a counter on Carrion Feeder because Carrion Feeder gets a counter for each time you sacrifice a creature to it. But it also can't block.
So Ivan's hanging in there.
He's hanging in there.
But
for dear life.
Yeah.
And Ivan has no cards in hand. So you're clear for any removal, any interaction. It's going to be some shenanigans right now. And you can tell George is just trying to do the maths to see, can I deal the 4 damage to close out this game? Well, 2's going to get through thanks to the Solitary Monk. And George has 2 cards in hand in here. So hopefully we'll have some interaction and some answers during blocks.
Ooh.
So right now, Ivan has taken 3, going to 1, because we've got this 1/1 soldier and this 2/2 Solitary Monk.
He can activate the Lombard.
He can activate the Lampard. He can also activate the Carrion Feeder, which will trigger sort of Port Cutthroat. That might fade a little bit of damage here. But Ivan is slowly running out of resources to stay alive. So Ivan's going to sacrifice Zulaport Cutthroat to Jury, I believe. Put it up to 4 power, so it does block the Shepherd of the Flock. And you gain 1 life off the Zulaport Cutthroat. You have no more ways to gain life, unfortunately, so this is going to be a tricky order. And it looks like George has some responses here. Oh, no, he's just going to boast with Usher of the Fallen. Just keep that steady stream of threats. Okay, so Ivan has gone down to 3.
Oh.
Getting pretty clutch here. I'm not sure what else Ivan can draw to get out of this situation. Apparently he's drawn a spell. We're going to have a Bastion of Remembrance. This is a really nice one. It makes a token, and it does create some life gain in a pinch. Bastion of Remembrance is it's not like the most it's not like the most important of sacrifice cards, but it's just a nice option to have. It creates a token, and it does this Zulaport Cutthroat thing of where you gain a life and your opponent loses a life, whatever creature you can put on. And eventually you can just stack them all up and just have these crazy life point swings.
So he's attacking here?
Well, Carrion Feeder can't block, so...
Right. But Jury's also going in.
Yeah. And he can sacrifice Jury to deal, right now, 5 damage to George. So you sacrifice Jury, deal damage, and it kills him.
Wow.
What's with the game 1 handshake? See, that's the thing with Rakdos Sacrifice. It's a deck that, yeah, Ivan was on the back foot for a good amount of that game, right? But there's just these fine margins and fine lines like, can I sneak in this extra few points of damage? And Jury, as I mentioned earlier, became a burn spell, just dealt 5 damage to the opponent there. And unsurprisingly, Rakdos Sacrifice continues to do well. And Ivan is playing really well, just acknowledging, like, trying to stem the bleeding of this aggressive white deck, just thinking, what are my outs? How can I live? And he got there, even with, Zulaport Cutthroat and Bastion of Remembrance just gaining, like, the 2 to 3 points of life that he needed to survive there.
That really adds up.
Yeah. I can tell Ivan really enjoys these decks because there's a lot of fine lines that I would not be smart enough to do it. My brain is not smooth enough for this style of deck, but it's really cool just to see someone who was the previous top 8 competitor of CubeCon of last year, who's looking likely to run that back this year, just playing a strategy that has a lot of nuances and is really interesting to play.
Yeah.
So
it's fun to watch. I like the deck a lot.
I really like the deck a lot. Sacrifice is just a really fun thing. It's powerful, but it rewards you for knowing all the nuances when it comes to the rules. So yeah, hopefully, maybe Ivan needs to win 1 more game, then he will be our Peasant Cube champion and then our top 8 competitor for the Cube draft later on this afternoon. Shall we talk about one of our sponsors? Sure. So you should check out CubeHeads. So CubeHeads is ran by this guy called Steve, who was at CubeCon here this weekend. He is someone that absolutely loves Cube, but he's not focused on the cube themselves. Don't get me wrong, he will play the cubes, but he's more interested in the people behind the cubes. So he has been interviewing people all weekend. He's looking to interview me at some point, so I get to gush about Peasant Cube, which is great. He has a really fun YouTube channel where he just talks about the cube curators that, create these cubes, and why do they love Cube. You should check that on YouTube. Steve is great, and Cube has, like, as we can see right now, like, the Cube community is great. There's just so many people that have come out to Madison, Wisconsin this weekend just to play Cube. And play Cube with strangers. It's not like a Commander thing where it's just like you're playing with the same group of people. You're meeting like-minded people and trying out different cubes. And Steve does a really good job of harnessing that and just saying, hey, what do you love about Cube? What's your favorite thing about it? And people talk about it. It's great. What do you love about Cube?
I guess the challenge of it.
Yeah, for sure.
And like just seeing old cards, like it's so nostalgic.
Yes. I love playing cube because sometimes I see a card I haven't seen before and I'm like, holy moly, this is great. I want this in my cube. Or see like a cool interaction that I've never considered about before. So yeah, there's a lot to like about cube. I think it's the best Magic format by far. And I'm not just saying that because I'm here. I think it's genuinely a great format. Okay, so we're gonna head down back to the play area where Ivan needs to win one more, and if he wins one more, he will be the champion of this Peasant Cube and will lock his place in the top 8 of CubeCon once again. Back-to-back top 8s is an impressive feat for an event like this. So it looks like George has a bunch of cards here. I don't think he's flipped one of the Zendikar DFCs back. So one of those is going to be a white spell from Zendikar Rising, because I believe it's still on the land side, which it shouldn't be. But also George would be on the play here, which is pretty good for an aggro deck. He was on the play last turn, but he did play that Sunstep Citadel first, but it didn't really matter because he managed to apply a bunch of aggression due to that Anafenza Kin Tree Spirit. So Ivan's going to go to 6 here, which we've seen quite a lot today.
Honestly, it's not that bad to mull to 6 with this mulligan rule.
Right. This is London Mulligan has changed how mulliganing has worked in Limited. I imagine you really enjoy it as a Limited player.
It's great, yeah.
It makes games much smoother. It makes playing stuff like Cube much smoother. Hell, it's made games like decks in Modern much better. Like Mono Green Tron became so much better because you can just sculpt these hands that allow you to turn free Tron, which is great because I'm a big Tron fan. So anything that makes my life easier is also great. But no, as we've seen, Ivan has mulliganed a lot in this this whole cube, and it's just a testament to mulliganing is really hard. I think it's one of the hardest things to master in Magic, and the fact that you can just go, yeah, I'm going to trade this average 7 for a better 6 is sometimes quite hard to do. So George has played a Dry Militant here, and Ivan has responded with a Carrion Feeder on turn 1, which is a which is a really strong start if you are the sacrifice deck. Trying to see what else is in George's hand here. I see a couple of lands. I see a Dry Militant that's going to rumble in the red zone because Carrion Feeder cannot block. I see a Mishra's Factory, which is not the kind of land you want to see so early on. That says to me George doesn't really have a lot of
there's a
creatures. There's a Zolopot Cutthroat. So Ivan is looking to establish this sacrifice engine that we have seen so many times in the previous rounds. So I need to see what this is because he forgot to flip it on the other side. Sure.
Is that takedown?
It's takedown, yeah. It just was a flip back from the last game. So we're going to take down something here. But in response, Ivan's going to sacrifice a Zolopot Cutthroat to Carrion Feeder just to gain that extra counter. And I appreciate Ivan flattening my double sleeve cards.
Oh no. Turn 3 play.
Oh no. Oh, he's going to animate Mishra's Factory, which is not which Ivan will be kind of happy to see because he's not going wide with these creatures that we saw in the last round, last game. Sorry, where we saw this Anavenza, we saw this Usher of the Fallen that generated like 3 to 4 tokens. So Ivan will be really happy just to see George just attacking with this Mishra's Factory.
So Ivan passed with 3 mana up as well.
Yep, but we do know Ivan has a lot of interaction. We've seen Firebolts, we've seen Heroes Downfalls. We've seen a bunch of removal from Ivan, so he's just looking to keep this board as clean as possible. Speaking of whom, we have the Anafenza Kin Tree Spirit that showed an impressive show last game. So Ivan's drawing a lot of lands, which is not something you really want to see out the sacrifice deck. I believe there's another land in hand as well, but we do have a skin render, which is going to make short work of this Anafenza. But there is going to be a response here. So George just casted a Snakeskin Veil, which is a combat trick that gives your creature indestructible, hexproof, and a +1/+1 counter. Oh, it's just hexproof, not indestructible, my bad. Those effects all sound the same. I'm going to be honest. There's 1 mana green spells. They all do very similar things.
Only 2 cards left.
Yep. It's like this Mistress Factory is rumbling in once again, because the only way to win is to lower the life total of your opponent. So it looks like Skin Render's going to do some chump blocking here, but George does have the mutagenic growth to not only grow Anafenza, but to make short work of this Skin Render. Looks like we have a Citizen's Crowbar, which does a nice job of gumming up the board. And look, right now, George looks to be in a really good position despite despite having no cards in hand. Be interesting to see if there are any responses here. Also, we have a Beetlebat Chief, which is a really nice top deck because it does make a bunch of Goblin tokens. And Carrion Feeder is going to get in because it can't block, so you may as well attack with it.
So he does have other goblins for the Siege Gang.
Yeah. There is the Sacrifice deck does have a little goblins, like a goblin sub-theme. Not intentionally, but a lot of the good sack cards tend to be goblins. And goblin tokens tend to be quite good here.
Ooh.
So it looks like George is putting a bunch of counters and stuff thanks to that Basri Solidarity. He cleverly animated the Mistress Factory first, so that land also gets a counter in combat.
The Carrion Feeder is quite large.
Yep, this is what happens. And this Carrion Feeder is going to be able to go on the crackback, even though Ivan is on 6. It's a lot of lands from the Sacrifice player, which is not what you want to see. So we do have a Judas Scourge Diva that is going to give 1 extra power to this Carrion Feeder. You don't really want to play Judith defensively either. It's not the style of card. So this Carrion Feeder is going to get in. It's going to get in for a whole bunch of damage here. It's going to put George down to 8. And we'll see if George can top deck anything here. So that is a Thraben Inspector, one of the best Magic cards you'll ever see. It's not quite what George wants to see here. He wants something a little more impactful, but he can trade the clue for more card draw. Looks like he's going to crack that clue straight away. Hopefully draw something that can impact the board and close out this game as Ivan is on 6. So we have that Usher of the Fallen, which we saw in the last game that generated an impressive amount of tokens. And thanks to this Anafenza Kintry Spirit, it will gain an extra counter due to Bolster.
I'm very impressed with Anafenza.
Yes, that was a really cool downshift. I'm very thankful for Commander Masters to give me more headaches to think about when it comes to my Peasant Cube. And it's just really nice to have like a signpost uncommon that really rewards you for playing like a mono white weenie aggro style deck. And there is a really good counter synergy in this queue because you have stuff like Conclave Mentor and Winding Constrictor that can just manipulate all these counters and do other cool things. And Anafenza is just a nice little addition to that game plan as well. So we're seeing what Ivan's going to do here. He is going down to 3, I believe. Yep, he's down to 3, but we've seen him down to 3 before and he managed to survive. I see an Unearth in hand here.
Oh,
that is going to fire off. Or he's going to cycle it.
Oh.
That's also completely fine. Because unfortunately, Unearth can't get back the Beetleback Chief, which is what Ivan would have really liked here. See what Ivan can do to get out of this situation. And it's like last game, Ivan managed to dig out of it before. Let's see if we can do it again.
Well, with 2 blockers, though, I don't think.
So the carrying feed is going to get in because it is a pretty big threat. And it looks like Ivan's decided to scoop it up. And we're going to go to game 3. And the next game is going to decide who is the champion of this cube. And also the first person to go into the top 8 of this CubeCon event. It's looking pretty close, isn't it?
Yeah, I love when games go to game 3.
Yeah, that's my favorite. That's my favorite thing too, because it means we can bring you more Magic as well as more Cube. So stick around. We've got one more game to go, and we'll have an interview with the winner of this draft, who you will see in the top 8 of CubeCon very, very soon. So don't go anywhere. If production can flag it away, that would be great. There we go. So George is on the draw now, which is going to be a problem with the fact that he is a mono-white aggro deck. Be interested to see what Ivan can draw here to just try and capitalize on this. Perhaps have an aggressive curve that we saw in the first round where he drew nothing but 1-drop, 2-drop Judith into Murderous Redcap. That would be really good. But we'll have to see. George has a lot of good protection spells to mitigate Ivan's removal. We saw the Mutagenic Growth and the Snakeskin Bell, which are all very awkward for Ivan to deal with.
It's a great matchup.
It is a really good matchup. It's not as one-sided as I thought it would be, because George does have a lot of X1s, but he also has a bunch of ways to add counters to his creatures, thanks to Anafenza and that Basri Solidarity.
So he can go wide and tall.
Yeah, that's important. Like, going wide is great usually, but when you're facing down a Mayhem Devil, it gets a little awkward. But the fact that he can just add like a second toughness, the fact that's like an X2 is really relevant in this matchup. So we'll let players shuffle up and find their hands. Hopefully we'll have some nice strong 7s here and a nice back and forth game of Magic. Looks like Ivan's going to do some pile shuffling just to make sure everything's all good and his deck is counted correctly. And there'll be a little bit of small talk before a very, very important game 3 that whoever wins this game will be in the top 8 of CubeCon. And I know Ivan is very, very eager to be back there once again, as he was the top 8 in CubeCon last year.
They both seem pretty calm, cool, and collected.
Yeah, right. I would be sweating right now. I would just be like all over the place. I don't know how these people do it. Even though this is like CubeCon, it's not like a Pro Tour. Even though I would be terrible at a Pro Tour, it's just like I don't know how these people can just stay so calm. Be interesting to see what the top 8 is in this CubeCon, because Reduke is out of contention, as is Caleb Durwood. Caleb lost a round in the cube that he was playing in earlier today. Hopefully Dom Harvey and Sam Black can trio, because that would make a really impressive top 8. But we'll see how that's going soon. So, very similar to before, Ivan has a carrion feeder on turn 1 that's going to get aggressive because George doesn't want to trade this Usher of the Fallen, which can take over a game for this creature.
Definitely. Probably going to boast here unless he has something really strong to play.
So we have a Rancor in hand here. We have a Mutagenic Growth, which we've seen do really well in previous games. We have a Porcelain Legionnaire, which is a nice aggressive option. Yeah. I also see a Quasari Pride Mage, which is going to have some nice exalted effects as well. Looks like Ivan is acknowledging how good Usher of the Fallen has been in this matchup and decides to just go for the throw tip on resolution.
He's like, not again.
Yeah.
Is this the Spirited Companion?
That is a Spirit Companion that's going to come down and draw a card. So hopefully George can find an untapped green source, which he has. I do see a Treetop Village in hand as well. And a Rancor, which is going to be pretty nice on this Porcelain Legionnaire.
That's huge.
Yeah. It is still an X1, but it's going to be a pretty big X1. It's like a 6-1 right now. It's basically a ball lightning at this rate. So we see a Midnight Haunting, which is going to produce some spirit tokens at some point for George, as well as this Quasari Primate, which rewards you for attacking with one creature.
And Ivan missed a land drop.
Ivan missed a land drop, and more importantly, a red mana drop as well. So he is strangled for red mana, which is unfortunate, something you don't want to see in the final game of this cube, which will determine who will be in the top 8 of CubeCon this afternoon. So George has some nice answers here. He also has a Path to Exile, but knowing George, you should probably not fire that off because that will give Ivan the mana needed to cast his spells. And more importantly, give him that give him that mountain. So this Porcelain Legionnaire is going in for 6 thanks to Exalted. And it's looking like a pretty devastating clock. So, Ivan drew a land, but it's not the land he needs because clearly I'm going to assume he needs some red cards to cast his spells. And now George is in the position of, can I kill my opponent this turn? There's a bunch of stuff he can do. He's got some removal spells. He has this Mutagenic Growth, which is pretty close to lethal, thanks to this this Porcelain Legionnaire. So we're going to go in with everything, send in the clowns.
And Ivan only has 1 blocker.
Yeah, just this Carrion Feeder cannot block. It kind of sucks when this happens, when Ivan is not be able to get that mountain. And he had a bunch of red cards, the Mayhem Devil, and then, yeah, that's a shame. Ivan drafted a really sweet deck, but sometimes all you need is that 1-2 curve from the white player. So congratulations to George, who will be our first confirmed top 8 competitor for CubeCon this year.
That is so exciting.
It is exciting. And he gets to draft the vintage cube, so he actually gets to hold physical power if he opens it in this cube. There are no proxies at this event, so it's going to be really exciting to see George and 7 other players that we'll find out soon who will be in that top 8 of CubeCon. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have an interview with George and we'll talk about his draft, how he feels about the Peasant Cube, and what kind of picks he took, and what made him decide to go into this white, splashing green aggro deck. So be back soon. Hello. So we are back with the trophy winner of my Peasant Cube. We've got George here, who has locked themselves into a top 8, into the top 8 of CubeCon this year. How are you feeling? You must be buzzing.
I know. It's honestly a little too much to take right now, so I don't feel all the positivity yet, but it's flowing in.
I imagine when you sit down to draft that cube with 7 other people, and it's Magic Online Vintage Cube, where you get to draft some physical power in person, it's going to be so exciting.
It's pretty exciting. Yeah.
So talk to me about your draft. Like, what was your first pick? What did you open? Why did you decide like this white-green aggro deck?
Yeah, absolutely. So my first pick was Rancor.
Okay.
I took it. It's just a generically powerful card. Resilient to removal. So in a deck where you want to be attacking, it's a great way to get in with Trample.
Yep.
I'll be honest. I know that generally in these types of cubes, red-white are where the aggro decks are.
Yes.
So I was kind of confused. Hey, a green aggressive card. Where does that fit in?
Yeah.
And then so I was kind of pivoting more towards white as I was getting packs and getting these kind of cheap aggressive creatures getting passed. The big signal for me was when I saw a Thraben Inspector on like a 6th or 7th pick. So I figured,
no respect. What the hell?
I know. And there was a Blink deck in there. So I figured it must have been another good card in the pack. No shade on anyone else. But I figured, okay, if I can get Thraben Inspector on the wheel, that probably means there's going to be enough white cards flowing.
Sure.
Turns up pack 3, I did get a pack where I had 2 aggressive creatures, took one, got the other one on the wheel.
Okay.
So that worked out really well.
Nice.
I wasn't planning on being in green because I figured mono white, you get a much more consistent mana base to get those 1-drops.
For sure.
But I missed playables, so I had no choice. And then it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Turns out,
the Snakeskin Veil was like great for you. It turned out a clutch in a couple of those games, and you had stuff like the Ash Barrens, you had the Sandsteep Citadel, which just allowed you to do this little splash if you needed. I will say that Anaffenza Kintree Spirit kind of took away that whole cube, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you panned over to my game in the second match, but I had a game where I went Anaffenza into the Conclave and just had 2 counters on everything.
Oh, that sounds sick.
It really let me get in there. With the big dice, it felt nice too.
Yeah, for sure. And what's really important about your deck that you drafted today, this Ragdoll Sacrifice deck is really good at chipping away at these X1s, which a lot of aggro decks have. You have a lot of these spirit tokens.
Absolutely.
And the fact that you can go tall as well as wide, thanks to Anafenza and this Badgery Solidarity, it just means you can keep applying this pressure and keep putting them on the back foot, which is really great to see.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I feel bad. Obviously, my opponent very mana screwed in the third game.
Yeah, you can't do much about it.
Can't do much about that.
It kind of sucks,
And
but it is what it is.
And unfortunately, my deck is not one that's going to give you time to recover from that.
Right,
So,
this is it.
double mana land draw. I decided to commit to the full attack there, and worked out well.
That was enough. So, yeah, congratulations.
Thanks.
Who are you hoping to see in the top 8? Is there anyone you want to play against?
Ooh.
Like I know Reed's obviously out. I know Caleb's is not going to be able to make it. So
Gotcha.
Is there anyone who you think that is in the top 64 that you would love to play in this vintage cube?
Honestly, I got some more Madison people out there, I'm sure, I would love to see. But Wan Shi is a player who did really well yesterday. I had the pleasure of playing against them in Creatureless Cube. And just a super positive guy, very, excited about plays on both sides.
Yes.
So I'd love to get to a draft and talk to them more.
No, that's sick.
Yeah.
So yeah, like just to wrap up quickly, obviously you being in the top 8 is going to be a big moment for you. It's probably a highlight.
Absolutely.
Probably be another highlight if you win it later on. What have you really enjoyed about this weekend? Because CubeCon is like a really community-focused thing. Like there's a lot of people, like as we can see right now, who are just open play cubing. So what has been a big enjoyment for you this weekend?
I gotta say the community is, you're absolutely right, is the big focus. I don't know if you can see from my jersey today, but
there's a bunch of you with the same jersey,
absolutely.
by the way. There's like an army of you.
My buddy Elliot, I knew since college. He moved out here, and I was shout out to Elliot. I was he brought me into the Magic scene that was in Madison,
cool.
and I got introduced to people like Dan, BK, all these folks that are just
BK's
super into the Magic community, and Dan building the Discord to just kind of get games going, get drafts going. I've had the privilege of drafting a lot of Cube, thanks to the group, and really just getting to see them all here and finding them around.
I'm convinced Madison's the most cracked Cube city in the world. I don't think there's anywhere that can quite beat it.
It's a brewer's paradise.
It is a brewer's paradise because you have people like yourself, you have people like the crew, Caleb and Sam Black, and it's just I don't know how we're beating these people. Like we did the England versus Wisconsin match the other day, and Grant, we came close, but it's like they're pretty intimidating. They're a pretty scary bunch. But either way, congratulations.
Thanks so much.
Enjoy playing some vintage Cube, which is
I will.
It's going to be great to say. Be sure to tune in. We will do the top 8 fairly soonish. I think we're going to have a break while these other cubes are wrapping up, and then we'll have our top 8.
Awesome.
So thank you very much.
Hey, thank you so much,
No
guys.
worries.
Really appreciate the chance.
No
And
and thank you for enjoying my cube. It means a lot.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for bringing it. It was a pleasure.
No worries. Hang around, and we'll be back pretty soon.